All right. Okay. Good. Yep. We're in agreement, more or less, on that. And moving on to the NFC North. This division it's a little tricky because I could see it going a couple different ways. I guess you can serve a little conservative. If I'm playing the odds and going with what I think is the safest pick, I pick the Vikings to win the division. I like the Vikings. I like their team. I have them at 10-6. I think this division could see a big turnover this year because I think the Packers are going to regress a little bit and the Lions are going to get better. But overall, I mean, I think they're a good team. I think they're a contender that is not to be taken for granted. I've seen a lot of bashing on the Vikings, and although as a Saints fan, I do hate them in pretty much every way imaginable, I think they're going to go 10-6 and win this division.
Yeah, that's hilarious because I have that exact thing here. I actually have them at 9-7 winning the division, but that's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Again, we're both Saints fans, just for the record, so yeah, I can't express how much I don't want to see the Vikings be good this year, and how much I would wish they would miss the playoffs. But in reality, because of their coach, because of their scheme, I just can't see that happening. They lost Kevin Stefanski, but Gary Kubiak is just such a good veteran offensive coordinator. He's going to implement a system that's going to do what they did last year. That's going to really utilize the running game. It's going to take a lot of the pressure off of Kirk Cousins. And we've seen that if you can give Kirk Cousins time and just allow him to play freely where he doesn't have to be such a playmaker, he can be very efficient. They did lose a lot of pieces. Obviously, they lost Stephon Diggs, but they did add Justin Jefferson, who could have an immediate impact as a rookie. On the defensive side of the ball, they lost quite a lot. Michael Pierce opted out, which really sucks for them because he could have been a huge playmaker. They lost Everson Griffin to free agency. And Linval Joseph, but they added Yannick Ngakoue, one of the best young pass rushers in the game, and Jeff Gladney, who is one of my favorite corners in the draft. So I think Mike Zimmer has proven the Vikings have been a top 9 defense for the past 5 seasons. Do I really see them dropping off from that standard? No. So that's why I picked them to win the division, personally at 9-7.
And the Vikings, they're one of those teams that have that established winning culture. And I think at worst, Stefanski to Kubiak is a wash. At best, it's an improvement in passing efficiency, which I think they could take a jump in this season. You gotta like their team, and there's a lot of questions around every other team in this division. So Personally, I think that's the only way. I'd be surprised if it wasn't the Vikings taking this division this year.
Absolutely. So moving into the second team in this division, I have the Packers here at 8-8. Huge regression from a 13-3 season last year, but I think I've expressed, and that I'm just such a non-believer in this team. I watched them play last year, and it just boggled my mind how they didn't go 9-7 and somehow went 13-3, and even bigger than that, how they even won a playoff game. I mean, they were playing the Seahawks, but still, we'll get into the Seahawks later. But I'm not a believer in this team at all. I see so many people saying easy favorites, pound the over, 9.5. That's a joke. I disagree. Pound the under. I don't like this team. I'm about to go on a rant, but they didn't add anything to an offense that is lacking playmakers. They can't rely on Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams solely as their producers. I think Aaron Jones, there's no way in hell Aaron Jones is going to produce as many touchdowns as he did last year. While I think he's a good player, regression is almost guaranteed for him. Devin Funchess, he was supposed to be their wide receiver too. He opted out. That sucks. A.J. Dillon, a glorified fullback as their second round pick. That's not going to do anything. They didn't really lose anybody, but as I said, I just don't think this is a 13-3 team. I don't think this is a 10-6 team. I think this is an 8-8 team, and I think that's what they're going to show on the field this year. What do you think about the Packers?
Yeah, you know what? I agree with everything you said, and I'll go as far as to say they're more likely to have a losing record than a winning one. How about that?
Yeah,
I mean, I agree. I was fully expecting the Packers to be one of my best bets this offseason, hammering the under. The line is incredible. The fact that the line right now is sitting at 9 over-under after a 13-win season, when you take into account the Chiefs went 12-4 last year, like, wow.
Yeah.
So it's clear regression is coming one way or another. I agree. I have them at 8-8. I think they're just an easy pick to go back to the mean, and I'll go as far as to say A.J. Dillon might be one of the worst second-round picks in recent memory. It's a team that I don't have confidence in, like you, and I think we'll get into the other teams in a second, but I think if the other teams in this division didn't have some clear issues or questions with them, I project the Packers to fall further back. I mean, this is a division that's wide open right now, and could be for the taking from any of these teams, and so I think projecting the Packers at 8-8 is the most reasonable outcome for them this season.
Yeah, definitely. So in third, I have the Lions tying with the Packers at 8-8. I think this is a sneaky team, and I would be so much more confident in them if I didn't have so many questions about Matt Patricia as a head coach.
All right, I have one question for you. Why are you taking all my takes from me right now?
I don't know.
2 teams in a row. Packers regressing, Lions with Matt Patricia. It's exactly what I'm about to say.
I just want to say, for the sake of the podcast, we didn't conference really at all beforehand on like our takes. We didn't really. We discussed a little bit kind of what we thought about this season, but we did this largely individually. So the fact that we have very similar takes is purely coincidental.
Yeah.
But just to touch on the Lions, I'm probably going to say a lot of things you're thinking. This is a team that, without the loss of Matt Stafford last year, easily could have went 9-7. Easily. And I could see that happening again this year. I love their offseason additions. Jeff Okudah, tremendous corner, a guy that has incredible upside, could be a lockdown corner, a guy that you can leave on an island for years to come. DeAndre Swift, a tremendous receiving back who also is good in between the tackles, a guy with a ton of upside. Could be an immediate playmaker in what has been a very pass-heavy offense. Kenny Golladay, in my eyes, is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. I think he showed last year that he's quarterback-proof and that he can be a big-time playmaker. Marvin Jones is a great guy to have as your wide receiver, too. I can see TJ Hawkinson having a huge step up at tight end this year. I think he showed flashes last year, but was kind of limited. And with the quarterback turnover when Matt Stafford got injured, that kind of hindered any chance he really had at improving. I think they have an underrated defensive line, and their only major loss was Darius Slay. But as I said, they took Jeff Okudah, who could be an immediate impact starting corner as a rookie. So I really like the Lions to improve this year. And they're a dark horse team to take this division. I know no one is saying that. And the only reason I'm not super confident in saying that is, again, my question marks over Matt Patricia. But even with that, I think this is a team that's going to improve for sure.
Yeah. And so you set me up perfectly for 2 things here. First of all, almost every single season, one team in this league goes from worst to first in the division. And I would think that the Lions are the easiest bet for that. The Vikings are good, but they're not like dominantly good. The Packers are going to regress. This division is open, and I'd like the Lions to do that, but again, it's Matt Patricia. All right, number 2, I have a mini rant about Matt Patricia. Okay. So the last coach I'm going to talk about that falls into the Hugh Jackson effect, which is notoriously underperforming at historic rates. Okay?
Yeah.
So far, Patricia has done just that. But it's just gone more under the radar because they had a decent roster and an underrated quarterback in Matt Stafford. So when Patricia took over the Lions 2 years ago, They went 9-7 in that season, and were due for positive regression. So they were a team that went 9-7 and underperformed. So they should have had a 10-win season, and they were on track for that. In his 2 years since then, with a roster that hasn't changed much, and if anything has gotten a little bit better, Patricia has gone 9-22-1, and that's just laughable. So under normal circumstances, I project the Lions to drastically improve because the regression data once again shows them at least a 500 team. But at this point, I just don't trust Patricia, and the last thing I'm going to do is let him burn me on an overbet or a division-winning future. So I'm laying off the Lions in terms of money talks this season. I'm not about to put my money on the Detroit Lions. With a new coach, as exactly the same thing as you said, I think they have a winning record. This is a good team. But I just hope for the sake of Lions fans, we see either a change of philosophy or staff or management, because this team's going to continue to underachieve otherwise, and that's why I have them going, again, at 7-9, which is, again, a little bit generous.
Yeah. Okay, so that leads our consensus last team in this division, the Chicago Bears. Yesterday, up until about last night, I had them at 6-10. I bumped them up to 7-9, although I could easily see either of those two scenarios happening this year. And I am not a Bears truther. I don't think Matt Nagy is a good coach. I wouldn't quite put him in the the Hugh Jackson tier, as you like to put it, but I just don't believe in this guy. I don't believe in their management. I think their GM has done an absolutely terrible job ever since the acquisition of Khalil Mack, because they had a team that had a defense that was good enough to carry basically an average or better offense to a Super Bowl, and they just ruined that. I mean, it all started, well, of course, with the Mitch Trubisky pick a few years ago, but we're not even going to get into that. I just look at their team, and I see basically what we saw last year, a disappointing team, despite having a ton of talent, mostly on the defensive side of the ball. They're just lackluster on offense. I don't think either Foles or Trubisky is good enough to get it done for them. So I'm just seeing another season of disappointment for Bears fans and the Bears in general.
Yes. Okay. So I actually have the Bears at 5-11.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's even lower than your projection. And I mean, my reasoning. I have a couple of points here. One, it's very clear. It's blatantly obvious. The Trubisky project hasn't worked out. So now they brought in Mr. Big Dick Nick Foles and his massively overpaid contract to compete in probably the most underwhelming quarterback battle of this offseason. And we saw Trubisky just won it. That just came out today. So that's got to be less inspiring. The fact that Nick Foles can't beat out Mitch Trubisky, I feel for Bears fans. So they boast one of the worst offensive line units in the league, and they lack basically any kind of talent on the offense outside of Allen Robinson that you look for in a winning season. They had that 12-4 year, but what's interesting is you drew that comparison to the 2017 Jaguars with the Steelers in the sense that, Ben Roethlisberger wouldn't have to do much. They have that defense to have that kind of great season. Well, now I'm drawing the comparison to them after that year and how they've just regressed back to that same, just an awful franchise. So I like that comparison because both the Jaguars and the Bears, before the Bears 12-4, I'm referencing the Bears 12-4 season here, when they won the division, not last year, but the year before, to the Jaguars' great season. So before each of those seasons for these franchises, they both had 5+ consecutive years of losing seasons, right? And then they saw a spike. They both saw a spike due to historical defenses that couldn't maintain past one season and inevitably regressed back to when they were forced to rely on incompetent quarterback play. So, Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky, I like that comparison. I think that's very fair. And I think the Bears are at a point where, I wouldn't trust them to come close to a 500 record.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I guess I should have left my 6-10 if we were going to go more in line with your take. But yeah, between 5 and 7, 7 wins being their ceiling in my opinion.
I agree. I think 7. I won't disagree with a 7-win projection because, man, that defense is good. Like, that's still a top 10 defense, and if the offense can be, not bottom 5, they can get there. But I'm not sure if they're going to even be that good. So for that reason, I think they're in the bottom of the NFC North this year, and I believe their win total is kind of high this season, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, It's at 8.5.
Yep.
And you know what? The public's betting the over. So how about we take our winnings and go with the under there?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to touch on, I actually have written down 10 of my favorite over-under bets on the season, so I'll touch on that later.
Yeah, we'll get into that one later.
Spoiler, they're on my list, but yeah, I'll get into that later.